Hello, my name is David Fatscher. I'm the Interim Head of Standards Development for Sustainability and ESG at the British Standards Institution. We are the UK national standards body and the UK member of ISO, the International Standards Organisation. And today I'll be talking about the important role that standards of good practice play in helping organisations manage their greenhouse gas emissions and report with more confidence.
So, climate action at scale, London's leaders are joining us. So, we have Mr. David Fatscher, Interim Head of Standards Development, Sustainability and ESG at BSI, the standard organization and the partner of International Standard Organization. And I have this veteran leader who is having 40 years of experience, especially 14 years in ESG, 40 in the whole experience. So, if I am inviting David to speak about these sustainability standards, that is the most eligible or most, it's our privilege to have you on this session, David.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Privileged to be here as well. So I think one of the challenges many organisations have in terms of getting started on climate action, turning that climate ambition into climate action is where do they go for guidance? I think in some ways actually there's almost so much guidance out there that's part of the challenge. A lot of industry associations are very good sources for action on climate. A lot of government departments and local authorities again provide a lot of very good guidance on getting started. But I think the challenge for organisations really is how do I get the guidance I need that is most applicable to my business? I think no two organisations are at the same point in their journey, so that I think becomes part of the challenge. For SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, obviously part of the challenge there is the limited time and resources they can dedicate to climate action, net zero. They won't have a dedicated team, unlike a larger organisation. They've got to keep the operational wheels turning of the business. So that in itself is a challenge. I think in some industries, for example, there are very carbon intensive industries that need to go further, faster, so they have their own specific journey to go on. And then the financial industry is in a way uniquely positioned because not only would a bank need to develop its own organisational strategy, it also needs to think about those organisations that it invests in and what their own transition plans are and whether those transition plans are credible. So that's part of the reason why there's a lot of kind of confusion out there, I think. BSI conducts a regular or annual survey called the Net Zero Barometer. And the survey we conducted at the beginning of this year showed that 80% of respondents are still very committed to net zero. But all of them, the vast majority certainly, said that what they need is guidance that is applicable and accessible. And that's really where we would say the role of standards comes to light, really, because there are different standards that have been developed either by BSI for more national applicability or ISO for global applicability. And if I can just touch upon a few of those. BSI published a standard a few years ago called Flex 3030, which is deliberately aimed at SMEs to get them on that journey. It's again, very accessible guidance. It's a free download that organizations can then use to implement and help them sort of create a more maturity pathway that's more achievable for them given their more limited resources and time. BSI also took a leading role in a recently published ISO standard called Net Zero Transition for financial institutions, again highlighting the point I made earlier. It's important that the finance sector understands what it needs to do to accelerate change. And BSI and UK experts have also been playing a leading role in a new ISO standard that's currently in development but publishing next year, which is ISO 14060. So that's net zero aligned organisations, and that provides guidance for organisations on their own transition, and it's the first international verifiable standard for net zero. And that particular standard, since we're here at London Climate Action Week, we are launching the public consultation of that standard. So wherever you are in the world watching this video, if you want to comment on that draft standard, now's your opportunity across this summer. Get in touch with your local or your national ISO member, and that's the way in which you can lend your own voice to that standard and make it an even stronger document. That have been developed through a trusted multi-stakeholder process. Organisations can have much more confidence in the way in which they manage and they measure greenhouse gas emissions, and that also means that they've got some trusted source they can use then when they want to communicate with their stakeholders. And on the point about trusted sources, another thing I wanted to say to you all as well is the fact that last year ISO and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol signed a strategic partnership agreement, and that means that actually in future, whilst there will continue to be ISO standards developed and the GHG protocol will continue to develop standards, they will be done in a much more aligned way. So that means there's a lot more harmonization, a lot more interoperability, which hopefully goes some way to address again this confusion out there that which standard do I use, which one's more applicable. And in the same context, the Science-Based Targets Initiative and ISO, sometimes it might be perceived that, again, are those rival standards? The answer is no. The SBTI is very much about supporting organisations and how they can set their science-based targets and validate those. And the ISO standard that is publishing next year and is currently at draft, ISO 14060, is about how organisations can produce their transition plans and make sure that those are available to stand up to audit.
David, you explained that the new standard in net zero is coming. Mm-hmm. So recently there has been an explosion in standards for reporting on ESG. This has led to what is called an alphabet soup. Yeah. How can businesses navigate this crowded landscape?
Yeah, you're right. The last maybe 5-10 years, there has been this growth in reporting standards. And that's very much come out because the organisations that have been developing standards for financial reporting have sort of entered the sustainability space. Mm-hmm. And in many ways that makes sense because good reporting is based on good data. So whether it's financial reporting or sustainability reporting, there needs to be the data there. But that's partly why I think there's possibly that sort of confusion in some ways. And I think it's presented organisations with a challenge. I mean, the primary organisation that's been sort of leading that charge in the last 5 years is an organisation called the International Sustainability Standards Board. And again, to my point earlier, I think it's important that people realise that the ISSB, which is developing standards for reporting on sustainability, and ISO are not in the same space competing. What I would say is that reporting standards are very much reporting itself is very much downstream from operations. So reporting standards, such as those developed by the ISSB, are very much disclosure requirements. And what they say is what an organisation needs to report, but they don't go into detail about how they report it. So what I would say is that the ISO standards, such as those I mentioned earlier, but there's a whole catalogue of ISO standards, are very much providing the kind of how to the what. So ISSB says what to report, and the ISO catalogue says how to report, how to an organisation can have the confidence that they've actually identified the data that they need to support and evidence their performance when they need to report. In terms of your question about how organisations navigate, and like I say, the soup that's out there with the acronyms, there definitely has been major attempts to harmonise, to align, to make sure there are fewer reporting standards out there. So I think what organisations need to do and recognise, particularly if they're global organisations, is they may have to report against a particular reporting standard in one particular jurisdiction but not in another. That may mean they need to collect data that they haven't collected previously. Either that's more data or better data. So I think one of the challenges probably for an organisation is to understand where are those reporting standards mandatory by regulation in the market they're working in, and when are they just more voluntary standards? If they're mandatory, then clearly they need to take those more seriously, and that's where they need to probably target their investment in terms of what data do we have for that mandatory reporting. And that's again, to my point earlier, where I think ISO standards are really important, because what the ISO standards do, which are effectively performance standards rather than reporting standards, they are standards which have the kind of processes and the practices that organizations need to do, the controls, the systems they need to kind of embed into their business processes, all of which goes to create a culture of reporting and gives an organization a lot more confidence and credibility when they need to get data that they use for those reporting standards. So I think that's how you've got to, sort of position them with something like ISO and ISSB. It's not a Coke versus Pepsi. It's about two different organizations developing standards, and about the ISO standards complementing the ISSB standards and providing that evidence for more credible reporting.
Thank you for clarifying that to our members. So, can I ask you, there is a huge rush to decarbonize, that there is too much focus on the E of the ESG. So what do you see, the S, is it getting ignored?
I think arguably that can possibly happen. I think, there is a term I've seen out there which talks about carbon myopia, that organizations can sometimes, in their rush to decarbonize, there's a kind of blind spot within their sustainability strategy. So they're focused on the E. Understandably, that can be obviously a priority. It's obviously a priority sometimes because it's what regulation requires them to focus on. But in doing so, what they might be doing is ignoring the S. Another concept that I'm sure people are familiar with is the idea of a just transition, so that in order to make sure the net zero transition happens, we can't be leaving communities behind. But the focus, I suppose, on that idea of the S and the E is, say, for example, I'm a manufacturer of a product. I might be looking to decarbonize operations and, say, invest in solar technology. But in doing so, possibly, I might be therefore importing solar technology that has been manufactured under forced labor. So yes, I'm going renewable, and that's a good thing. It's clean energy. But in doing so, unwittingly, I might be actually not addressing the S in ESG with such attention. And I think ESG itself, when the first time it was coined, it was very much about a framework for assessing impact. So I think the challenge for organizations here is applying a bit of systems thinking and recognizing that, well, if we do something here, it may have an impact here, and taking a bit of a step back and trying to understand that. And I guess to conclude, inevitably there are standards also for those S topics as well as the E, and there are for the G as well. And BSI published a standard on modern slavery in 2022, which is freely available and is now becoming an international standard, publishing later this year. So that enables an organization to take a more systems-based approach to the risk of modern slavery in their supply chains, and even in their subcontractor supply chains. And one of the things that the standard also does is puts the focus on the fact that this is an issue, a risk that the whole organisation needs to get its invest in, and that management really own that risk. So something like modern slavery in the context of climate action shouldn't be something that is then just siloed in the procurement and compliance or the legal department. It's something that the whole organisation needs to get behind. And like I say, an organisation really needs to sort of balance and recognise where one action, whilst good, may have unintended consequences. So it's about like I say, a systems-based approach, and recognising it's a holistic issue which needs to have a holistic solution.
Yeah, thank you, David, for taking us through the vital part of the implementation of the standard. Especially when World Safety Forum think about the employee welfare, maybe this particular standard on human slavery would be a point of contact, or like a point of discussion for the health and safety of the people.
Yeah, very much so.
And there will be. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you very much.